Hello, welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I have no notepad, so I'm going to wing this one completely.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss An American Werewolf in London, which came out in 1981, written and directed by John Landis. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows two American backpackers, Jack and David, as they are going on a bit of a 3-month holiday in Europe. They start off in the North Dales of England, and after having a bit of an awkward encounter at a local pub, they find themselves lost on the moors and attacked by an unknown creature. David wakes up 3 weeks later and realizes that he may be cursed by something dark and mysterious.
Stay on the road. Keep clear of the moors.
Beware the moon, lads.
So John Landis actually had the script for this many, many years before it would ever see the light of day.
Many moons.
Many moons before. He was working on Kelly's Heroes at the time. He was like a production second unit director, assistant, etc. And apparently he saw some gypsies burying somebody while he was there. And it gave him the idea of, like, resurrection of people coming back from the dead.
Yeah.
So he went back home eventually and he wrote the script for An American Werewolf in London. And then a few years later, he was making his own movie, Schlock. The one where he's dressed in, like, an ape suit.
Yeah.
And it was on the set of that he met Rick Baker and started to talk about this script and this idea of An American Werewolf in London. Mm-hmm. Rick Baker was like, well, I do all these special effects. I'll do the werewolf for you.
Yeah.
Years and years and years later, you know, Rick Baker has now been signed on to finally do this werewolf that he wanted to do for the Howling.
Yep.
Because no one wanted to give John Landis money to make this hybrid horror comedy werewolf thing. It had never been done. No one wants to see horror and comedy in the same film. But it was only then when Rick Baker was signed on to Howling was in production, that the studio went, oh, they're making a werewolf movie. Well, we got one here somewhere. John?
Yes.
John Landis, you got your money, go ahead and make it. And that's when he called up Rick Baker and said, get off Howling, we're finally doing this werewolf movie that I told you about 10 years ago. Let's go make it.
Yeah, I love that idea, and the fact that then Rick Baker is going to ring up Rob Bottin and he's just like, dude, can you carry on doing this? I've got to go off and do this. You know? And the two of them probably talked into the middle of the night going, well, I'm going to do this in my movie and you should probably do this.
Well, the two of them are, for me, like the two greatest pioneers of transformation, body morphing, special effects in films.
Man, if they'd worked together on one movie.
I know, right? I know.
know.
Bring them both out of retirement now.
I think it's also crazy as well that this film came out the same year as The Howling and the same year as Wolfen.
All around the same time. Like, the beginning of the 80s was, like, Werewolf Central.
Yeah, and, like, I was researching. Obviously, we've been doing the Howling series, and this was our big one at the end of it. But, like, reading up about Wolfen as well, I'm like, oh, man, we should have tried to maybe fit that one in, because you've got the special effects of Howling, then you've got the special effects of American Werewolf, and then because you had those guys there, you had nobody on Wolfen.
Right? So you don't have werewolf transformations, you just have
nothing.
wolves.
You just got camera work in that movie. But I've always had a special connection with this movie ever since I was a really, really teeny weeny little Iain. You know, I've always loved film, I've always loved television, and my memory fades as I get older, but the basics stay the same. I know I was in my front room, I was constantly seeing the front cover of An American Werewolf in London, which is like a side shot of like David Naughton's face in mid-transformation. You got the title on the movie, you know, and I remember like a family member thinking it was funny that they should put this film on for me at such a young age and that I should watch it, you know, because the 80s, that's what we did to kids. And 16 minutes into the movie, a moment happens which was so absolutely fucking terrifying for me at such a young age that it just cemented the movie as being that one movie. You'll always have that one movie that scared you. That one movie that you'll have memories of and nostalgic feelings, and you'll go, oh, I remember watching that when I was blah blah. For me, it's An American Werewolf in London, and it's amazing how the film lulls you, because when you have that opening with Blue Moon playing,
Right, right. Well, that's the thing with this film as well, is with the very first test audiences that Universal screened this for were really all a bunch of seniors, and so they apparently all walked out of the screening.
Oh yeah, man, dude, seriously,
But
first
then-
time I saw it.
John Landis went on to say that this film was advertised, though, as from the director of National Lampoon's Animal House. So people are like, yeah, Animal House, let's go see the next one, and they get this.
Well, yeah, but that's what I mean. The lulling of this movie, with that music playing, the quietness of the moors. I love how mysterious and isolating it just makes you feel.
Right.
Being the fact, from the UK, don't live too far from the moors. I've seen it, when you stand up there and there's just no civilization for miles and you're thinking, fuck, like, there could be a wolf over there. And you see the truck pull up, and David and Jack just kind of gradually, just slowly get out of the back of the truck. They've been traveling. You don't know where exactly they've come from, and you don't exactly know where they're going. But you've got these two great actors who are just like, yep, we're traveling. And David Naughton and Griffin Dunne. It was only, what, 4 or 5 years ago we watched After Hours.
Yes.
With Griffin Dunne in.
Yeah.
And he's fabulous.
He is. They're both really good. I mean, I was really surprised that they got the Dr. Pepper guy.
I drink Dr. Pepper and I'm proud. I'm part of an original crowd. And if you look around these days, there seems to be a Dr. Pepper craze. I'm a pepper, he's a pepper, she's a pepper, we're a pepper. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?
These two actors, they hired David Naughton, but they had trouble with Griffin Dunne because it was going to be a UK production.
Right.
The UK was like, we can't have that many American actors coming over. So John Landis went, fine, we'll do an American Werewolf in Paris instead. And the studio were just like, oh, and they gave it a little time. They went, oh, okay, you can have him.
Yeah, you can bring him. Man, if they should have gone with that one.
No one wants to see it in Paris.
But these two friends, they completely settle you in. They've known each other for an incredibly long time. They're on this 3-month sabbatical holiday, and they're kind of miserable. Or at least Jack is, because he'd love to be sunning himself, in Europe, next to a pool, maybe with a drink in his hand. Where David is happy to be isolated in the moors, with it raining sometimes. And once they enter into the slaughtered lamb, which I like, for me, if I came across a pub with a certain name, like a couple of places you don't go to. You don't go to the Overlook Hotel. You don't go to the slaughtered lamb, and you don't go to the Titty Twister.
Right.
These are places you just don't go. But they walk into the pub, and it's just such awesome awkwardness. That atypical locals.
Well, exactly. It's the fact. I mean, it feels more local to us, but it's the fact that you have these two American outsiders that
Yes.
the pub just goes quiet. Everybody's eyeballing them. They're complete outsiders. They're uncomfortable, but that they're wet and they're hungry, and they sit down and they ask for soup.
Yeah.
They ask for food, and they're given nothing. Like they're offered tea, and they say, "Well, I haven't got any, but I'll go and put some on for you two." Yeah.
Like who in England doesn't have the kettle on?
Exactly. I was just
all
like,
time?
ooh, like that's gotta hurt. They don't have tea for you. But it's just they notice the pentagram on the wall and the burning candles. And and the rest of the town are joking about the Alamo. Remember the Alamo?
Yeah.
And in the background, you've got to recognize Drop Dead Fred and the warden from Alien 3.
Oh man, Brian Glover and Rick Mail in the background, are absolutely class. I love the guy who obviously he's got the darts.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but he's been in like the last 2 Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yeah.
He's a great British actor as well.
You made me miss.
You made me miss.
And that's just the way that, like, because you've got these 2 American actors and then you've got this plethora of British actors, kind of making them feel uncomfortable. That even when Brian Glover lightens the mood and tells the Alamo joke, and everybody breaks down laughing, when Jack turns innocently and says, What's the star for? Like, everything just drops.
Excuse me. What's that star on the wall for?
And now the film brilliantly balances, and I've seen this film maybe 20, 30 times. This is the first time to proper sit down and, deconstruct it. The film brilliantly balances the comedy and the horror so well, as if it's like it's coming out of black and white classic horrors and it's coming into the 80s, but it can't go too deep into the 80s because, well, the 80s was really colourful and crazy. So we've still got to keep the mysterious villagers who don't like the outsiders, telling them to get out of the pub because how dare them, they come to hear those city folk. But they know, the villagers know, they've just sent the city folk off to their deaths.
They get that cryptic warning, to beware the moon and stay on the path. It's like, what? Well, yeah.
Man, that ain't cryptic. That's okay. I was sat back down in my chair like, so don't go outside. But why the fuck they didn't just buy a round of drinks for everybody in the pub? That would totally broke the ice. Oh, what's the pentagram for? Get out. How about drinks for everybody? Okay, let's talk about this giant star we've got to keep away, bad spirits. But,
well, the movie's got to happen,
yeah.
And these two didn't. It looked like they wanted to get out of there anyway.
Oh, totally. It's yeah.
But the two actors, I think it was Griffin Dunne, was complaining. He felt very uncomfortable because they shot this in January in Wales. It was freezing cold. You can literally see him like wiping snot out of his nose. The actors were very uncomfortable, but they did shoot this entire film chronologically.
Nice.
So they did shoot from the beginning all the way through, mainly because they needed to give Rick Baker more time to continue making all of the effects.
Yes.
But they also thought, usually you only shoot chronologically when it's for the actors' benefit because they get to grow their character and feel the character's changes as they go. But yeah, this was just done because, they needed the effects time. But this is the build-up. This is our last real moment of getting to know these two, where they talk about the folks back home in America.
Yeah.
They start singing until they realize they're lost. And then one of this film's most signature anythings is the wolf howl.
Beware the moon and stick to the road. Oops. Oh, shit, David. What is that?
Yeah.
It is. It's enough to make your hair stand up on end. It's spine chilling.
The beauty I find of it, it's not your traditional howl. Like you like werewolf howl. Wolf howls all pretty much sound the same, other than the wolf itself could change its side and stuff. This isn't a normal wolf howl. This is like if a demon shouted into like a fucking mouthpiece in a tunnel.
It does. It seems to hit like a particular note or a sound level that just immediately gets your attention. And it's apparently it's like 7 to 9 different animal sounds.
Yes, and
all mixed together: a lion, an elephant, a tiger, a wolf, and I believe a train.
Well, because that's the thing. Because obviously, being a werewolf, it's a hybrid of all these different things, and I love the fact that, because of, I don't know, camera work at the time, directing, people's ideas, maybe the fact that Rick Baker didn't have the things available or it wouldn't look right in the camera, everything is worked by just perspective. And so you follow the camera following Jack and David as they hear the howl. And they're walking and they're like, look, we need to walk away from it. So immediately you're like, it's behind them. And then when the camera comes and sits in front of them, so they're looking at you and you hear it growl again, then they're like, it's in front of us. And they're looking at you. It gets me every time because I want to see what the wolf looks like, but at the same time, I don't. And like I said, the kid in me, when I was a kid, I didn't know this at the time. When I was a kid, I'm like, I don't see anything. Horror movies do this all the time. You're cutting back to the pub, and the villagers are just cementing the fact that there's something out there.
This is again for me where the comedy is just, it really hits it really well. Where, the Brian Glover's just like, I didn't hear anything. And like that wolf howl is like a moment later, and he's just like, no.
No.
I do like it. The barmaid, she's just at least like, you've got to go after them. You can't send them out there on their own.
This is it. For me, they are protecting themselves from this evil spirit that they know is out there.
They don't want the truth to get out.
But they don't want the truth. So, like, he's ignoring it, and he's hoping that the wolf will kill them and destroy all evidence so that they can just keep it. And I'm like, no, you should try to find this. But then Jack and David are moving through, and this bit will always sit with me for probably until the day I die, from, like I said, that little kid in me sitting in front of the TV watching this moment, David and Jack walking really quickly and David slipping, and you think, oh my god, and it's a bit of a jump scare, and he goes to help Jack up and you forget the fucking wolf's there until it's there.
And, you know, Griffin Dunne, you know, Landis told him just to, like, let rip with the screams. Just go for it.
That's what's
and I think that's what triggers the reaction in the audience, is that, you know, his, oh my God, screams of help, like, Jesus Christ, it sounds so real, so horrible.
It's up there with the girl from Jaws.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely,
her
the first
screams.
kill, and it just really sets the tone and the mood. And, you know, like, you can't fault David for just running away. It's like a natural human response to run away. But, you know, he hears his friend still screaming, and he does, after a few moments, like, you know, come back to his senses and go running back to his friend, only to see the remains before he is also pounced on by the wolf. And then saved literally by the villagers with shotguns. They turn up, they shoot whatever it is on top of him.
Yeah.
You know, and David's still, like, just trying to regain his senses after being attacked, turns over and sees a naked man filled with bullet wounds. And now that immediately, when the film first released, that confused the hell out of everybody.
Really?
But it was like, I guess, like, by the time we got to see the film, we'd already known werewolves.
Yes.
Like, werewolf mythology just became as obvious as, you know, vampires and sunlight and garlic.
As soon as you're scratched by a wolf, you know, and you're not immediately killed, you are going to become
So the
one.
moment we see the human corpse there, like, my mind just went immediately like, oh, that was the werewolf.
Yeah, I remember when it was young me watching it for the first time, being surprised, shocked, but understanding that I've just seen this monster animal, dog, wolf thing attack and kill a grown man, and now the body's on the floor. He was a werewolf.
Yeah.
Flat out, you know.
It just goes to show that from, like, 1981 all the way through to now, like, how much more like, universally we know the rules of werewolves and vampires.
Yeah. And the film then jumps brilliantly to the hospital in London, and we get introduced to Nurse Alex Price, played by the amazing, the legendary, the, like, oh so gorgeous Jenny Agutter. I've had a soft spot for this lady since probably Walkabout. Yeah, you know, like she is amazing. She's a brilliant British actress as well, and she just cements with me in this film the innocent kind of girl in the story, the love interest, you know, without even trying. Like, she's so pretty. Like, David not falling in love with her would be a plot hole for the movie.
Well, I do like the service that he receives in this hospital, you know. Like,
oh God, the NHS has gone.
Right, I was like,
Sometimes.
Jesus Christ! Like, this is all, like, you know, he gets fed in bed, he gets looked after, he gets pampered.
I mean, in fairness,
and then she takes him home with her afterwards. He's just like, wow.
Oh, but the whole time in the hospital is an amazing middle section of the movie, and it's amazing to realize that this movie is only an hour and a half long, and the first 25 minutes is that first wolf attack. And then you will not have anything else happen really until the hour mark. And like I said, it's only an hour and a half. But the way everything is condensed, especially in this hospital section, you know, Nurse Price, Dr. Hirsch looking into the attack, and you start to understand what's going on through Dr. Hirsch's involvement with the detectives. You know, how the villagers found the boys, you know, and killed this lunatic. Dr. Hirsch explains, like, they didn't even see Jack's body. You know, it was pretty much tagged and sent away. David's wounds were already cleaned and treated, even though the doctor didn't even see him. But here he is, and so he's being explained to, like, your friend is dead.
So it does feel a little bit like a conspiracy because the detectives closed the case. Case closed. We know, what happened.
Oh, I did put that down to the ineptitude of those police officers. You know, the villagers are definitely covering it all up. And I love the way that Dr. Hirsch says to David at one point, like, look, if there was a giant monster running around Northern England, we'd have seen it on the telly.
I was like, yeah, no, you wouldn't. Not necessarily.
No, exactly. I'm sat there like,
this is in the modern age where everyone's out there with mobile phones, But you were right about one thing. That's one of the big themes of the film is like survivor's guilt.
Yes.
Because he didn't do anything really to help his friend. He survived this attack, and so he's dealing with the guilt of losing his friend.
Yeah.
While still being this outsider.
But it's also those nightmares that start to come along.
Yes, those nightmares are, some of them one of the highlights of the film because they're so wild.
Yeah.
We have the dream sequences beginning where he's just running through the woods naked, and that was the reason why Dr. Pepper fired him from ever coming back. And then we see the shots where he's seeing the deer, and he's pouncing and he's eating decapitated deer or leg.
Yeah.
But then we get the scene where he's in the hospital bed in the woods. And you have that blast where his eyes open and you see all the fangs. And then we get the next dream sequence, which is it's the one where he dreams where he's back in the safety of his home. We find out that David is a Jewish person, and so he's got this idyllic household. We also find out that one of the nurses at the beginning copped a feel at his nakedness, but while he was brought in, just to remind you that he's Jewish, and so the Nazi werewolves turn up at the door and gun down the entire family. Whilst I think it's Rick Baker, werewolf man, has got the knife to his throat and slits his throat afterwards, and you're like, that was so violent, so unexpected and sudden.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to process what just happened, and then you watch it back and you go, man, those werewolf masks were terrible. But like only now watching them on Blu-ray do I go, those masks were terrible. Only because there was no articulation. Like the eyes didn't move, the mouths didn't move.
But that I think also feeds into the fact for me that it's a dream sequence of just how silly and over the top it is.
It is a memory of a dream, maybe. Yeah.
Because...
But it was also the fact that because Rick Baker had his hands full with all the other stuff he was doing, he literally got some volunteers. These were fans of Rick Baker that messaged in, wrote letters in saying, we love your work. We're trying to do work like you do. We'd love to help.
Yeah.
And so we went, come and work for me for free if you can. You're gonna make these werewolf masks for the stream sequence. And so there we go. Now it is just so effective in how violent it is, but it's the fact that John Landis wanted to play with the audience a little bit because we watched David wake up and he sat there with Nurse. He's like, I got a headache. She's like, I got just the thing for that. Goes to open the curtains and there's another Nazi werewolf just stabbing her to death.
It's fucked up. And I loved deconstructing all these nightmare sequences and then realizing that as you play them, it just subtly, the movie tells you about how David's changing internally.
Yes.
Like when he first sees himself naked, he's now the wolf. His wild nature coming alive, attacking the deer and eating it. When he sees, I realized that he starts to talk to Nurse Price because she feeds him at one point
because he's not hungry.
And then he has the dream where he's the monster in the bed, and that's where the movie's telling you like he's starting to dream about her now. When he then goes home, this is him wanting to go home. But then this is the movie telling you what would happen if he brought the monster home. He would kill and destroy his whole entire family. Yeah. So then the next morning...
It was because his friend is now arrived into the hospital, and this for me was where I was like, you know what? I've always said that the werewolf effects were the best thing about this movie.
Yeah.
But watching Griffin Dunne come in in that gory makeup with the flapping bit of skin. You know, it's that flapping bit of skin that makes up for it. It would seem to have been a mistake, but like that's the final selling piece.
It's the detail, isn't it? It's the hole in the neck.
It's the fact that it is bright fluorescent lights. You know, there's no shadows. There's no hiding it. You see it, and now seeing it in Blu-ray and seeing it in its full, like, it's fucking amazing practical work right there. And Griffin Dunne sells it so well by being so happy and in such a good mood, you know, whilst being dead.
See, now, question. Now, we've seen this movie a load of times, so I think this is the best time for me to bring it up. Does he actually eat the toast?
In a deleted scene, yes. And the toast comes out of his neck.
Right. But no, what I'm saying is, does he actually eat the toast? I mean, are we saying that the spirit of Jack comes from the other side into the real world and picks up a toast like poltergeist style, dips it into his egg, eats it, and says, "Oh, you're a werewolf"? Because
so you're saying if other people would have come in and see that moment, would they see flying toast?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Or is this all in David's head? Is it in David's head?
I'm going to say it's in David's head.
Because
nobody else sees the ghost of Jack.
No, I know. I get that. Nobody else hears him or sees him. But that's what I think is like. I tend to believe that would actually happen because I used the sequel. I know this is blasphemous, and I know a lot of people are going to be.
There is no sequel.
There is a sequel to An American Werewolf in London. There is. I mean, Jesus Christ, John Landis was planning one like fucking straight after this one. But from what we understand from Jack when he explains, he explains that he's caught in a limbo, and that everybody who is killed by the werewolf curse, not just by the werewolf, but anybody who is killed by the werewolf curse, the bloodline, they will not go to heaven or hell, whichever way you want to look at it, and they're just going to walk around in life, surrounded by the living and the occasional corpse. And that's it. But he explains it to David like he's been informed of all this by some other outside influence. Like the universe has now told him this because, well, what else is he going to fucking do? And that he has to convince David to kill himself, or David is going to change.
Have you ever talked to a corpse? It's boring. I'm lonely. Take your life, David. Kill yourself.
And he even drops the bombshell like, dude, in 2 days you're going to change. And you sit there like, fuck, the time jumping in this movie is amazing. They've gone from 1 full moon to then 3 weeks to then, boom, 2 days. It's going to be the big change time. And we still haven't really seen anything other than this zombie now corpse.
But so we get some more like romance time now with David and Nurse Price, where she takes him home. You know, they share a bed, they share a shower.
Oh, God, the way she just looks at him, she's like, I'm not in the nature of bringing strange men home, but I find you incredibly attractive. I'm like...
Well, that's, you know, she's just like, you make some comment, I'm going to take a shower.
Yeah,
and he's just like, you've already told me all I need to know.
You can watch TV while I have a shower. I'm like, TV, Jenny Agutter in the shower. But immediately, like, it shocked me when I was watching this for the review, how I thought there was still a bigger space between the second visit from Jack.
Right.
Because they do have sex, and then David wakes up in the middle of the night and Jack's there looking a little bit more worse for wear. Like the colorization has now started to set in.
It's starting to rot.
That's the memory hitters of this movie that you're just like, oh shit, the continuity of the corpse. Like, so he wasn't appearing to David until David came conscious.
Yeah.
So he, like... because
he's not been rotting this whole time that he was waiting for him to wake up.
Well, that's it. Jack explains it like, look, I went and saw my funeral. So he's been to America and he's watched his funeral. He then watched his girlfriend or the girl that he fancied have sex with somebody else, which really bummed him out. And now he's come all the way back to look. Did he walk? Fly? I don't know. Anyway. But Jack explains to him, like, look, dude, seriously, you really need to sort this shit out. You can't be having sex with a nurse. You're going to change tomorrow. It's going to be bad.
Oh, God damn it, David, please believe me.
You kill and make others like me. I'm not having a nice time here.
Griffin Dunne is acting his fucking ass off under shit tons of makeup, you know, playing
Well,
the lost soul he is.
that was the thing. He said he had a moment of crisis. John Landis and Rick Baker often said to him, like, "Are you claustrophobic?"
Right.
Because of the days and hours you're going to be in this makeup. But Griffin Dunne said that when he was sat in the chair for like 6 hours putting on the makeup of him being dead,
Yeah.
he said he had like internal panic attacks because he literally saw himself
like,
dead
"This
in
is
the
what I'm gonna
mirror,
look like
staring
when
at
I'm a
myself in the
corpse."
mirror for like days. And he said it drove him nuts. He literally got depressed. And then here's John Landis going, "Be the happiest soul of a bitch alive." And he's just like, "I'm dead. I'm dead."
But I love the way as well that David Naughton acts his ass off as well.
Yes.
That he doesn't believe he's going to turn into a werewolf. He doesn't believe his friend is there, even though he does kind of believe that his friend is there. You know, because Jack is touching stuff's moving. So it's like I'm talking to a ghost. And he knows that they were attacked by a monster that night, not by a man. So he's struggling internally.
Well, exactly. He's having doubts because the police were like, it was an escaped lunatic. And I don't know what he's talking about. Some lunatic werewolf.
Yeah, we can go back to America at any point.
So he literally thinks he's having a mental breakdown because of the survivor's guilt and everything else. We do also follow the doctor to find out what was going on, and
Yeah.
they give him the runaround. But at least when he asks about the pentagram, like they've got a cover story now. They've actually gone, well, that didn't work last time. We need a cover story for when somebody does randomly ask.
We were going to paint over it, but heritage-wise. And I love the fact that you've got that one actor, the darts player, who does break the information down to Dr. Hirsch. And so it's like when Dr. Hirsch tries to explain it later, like, oh, it's like mass hysteria has taken over that village. You do have one member who's like, look, we're sorry for what we did. He needs to be stopped. We don't want the curse escaping, our secret getting out. And so then when you cut back to Nurse Price, she's going off to work and David is staying in the flat on his own. The movie lulls you in again. The music starts up with Credence, Bad Moon Rising. It's just playing gently in the background, keeping you all happy and positive. David is growling in the mirror and pretending to be a wolf and then watching TV, or he's getting bored looking at the fridge because he's hungry.
He locks himself out at one point.
He locks himself out. Now, like the movie, like Benji's a great little actor for this movie. This little boy in the hospital who Nurse Price keeps talking to, and all he says is no. And you think he's a bit annoying, but the movie uses him quite well to jump. So in this sequence, Nurse Price comes over. It's nighttime. She comes over and she's settling Benji down to bed. He's like, "No, I don't want to go sleep." She is like, "Yes, you are." And the camera pans up, and you see the full moon, and the music gently changes. And all of a sudden, David starts screaming his fucking head off.
Help me! Please! Help me!
This transformation sequence is probably the most legendary, the best visual transformation of any character into something else ever put to screen. And probably is to this day, and probably will be for all time.
Yeah.
This is the crowning achievement, I believe, in visual practical effects, especially with a transformation. Rick Baker won the Oscar for this. The Oscar for practical special effects was created after seeing this, and for all those good reasons.
Yeah.
This transformation, unlike the Howling sequence, because in Howling, when they transform, it's orgasmic. It's euphoric.
Yeah,
they love it.
They are enjoying it, yeah.
This is a tragedy this time around because, he's turning into a monster which he has no control over.
Yeah.
And the physical agony, the biology of his bones breaking and recontorting, muscles stretching, face elongating, claws, nails, paws, the back, the ribs, watching everything change whilst he's screaming, and all in these, cuts. And obviously the big takeaway here again is that it's all done under full lighting.
Yeah.
There's no shadows here, so you see all the details. So Rick Baker cannot hide anything from you. And him and his team spent months and months and months making individual parts that would elongate or stretch. Mm-hmm. And then, when, Landis went, action, cut, next scene. You know, Baker would be like, but I spent months doing that. Like, you used it for 5 seconds. And he went, it'll probably be shorter in the film as well.
Yeah.
It's just like, you can imagine being devastated, like, all your work just for that. But then when you see that shot, when the head stretches on screen, you're like, nothing like that done that well before.
Like, in comparison, you know, and we've been through the Howling movies, and we watched the first one, like, very intently, and the changes in that one were really, really good. But they lit it and filmed it in a particular way. Like Gary said, that the character enjoyed changing. And so when they become the standing wolf thing, man, you know, you're like, okay, that's cool, but it's not great. I need great. What is out there that's great? And then you get to an American Werewolf in London. And like I said, just the acting from David Naughton, screaming his goddamn head off about all the body changes he's going through. You know, all of the practical effects that we're just seeing happen. I like the fact that it becomes a wolf, not a wolf man.
Yes.
You know, so the wolf that we see one shot. And it really surprised me because I watched this film twice, 2 days leading up to this review. So I fucking studied it. That we get that one shot where it's on all fours on the floor and the camera goes along the side. And that's the only real time you'll ever get like a big long body shot of the wolf. I mean, the effects are so good, but they are just effects. And so they don't look real when the camera stays on them for a little bit too long. You know, they look just enough. When I compare that wolf to then the CGI computer affected one that we got in 97, I can see the connection that, you know what, yeah, the technology changes and the movie changes, but at least the person actually tried to keep Rick Baker's idea as solid as he could for the next movie. Because how the fuck does the wolf get out?
Oh, at the house?
Yeah!
David opens the door at one point because he's really hot, and so he left the door open.
Right, but but she's got a front door. She's got a front door, and then she's got her door. And they've got windows. Now, I reckon that the wolf, because he opens the window and climbs in at one point, but you don't see him lock it. I reckon the wolf actually did open the window and climb out. Because it never comes up again of how David...
I was pretty sure the door was left open, but...
Yeah, you're right. He just walks out like, nobody closes the door. None of our neighbours heard screaming. Like, and how does a full moon change you? Like... Does the moon have to be at the highest point of its zenith for you to change? Or is it like vampires, like you just have to get the moonlight to hit you and you immediately change?
Yes.
Right, okay, so... The wolf gets free and we now get a spate of killings that... We've already had the camera work from the original, from the beginning of the movie, showing us the perspective of the wolf. And so the film just keeps all that up. And it just really works. You've got the boyfriend and girlfriend who are coming over for a dinner party. Hey, let's go round the back and scare them. Okay, so happy. Not realising that some giant, huge fucking monster is just about to leap out and rip them apart.
Honey, those youthful hooligans are playing up in the park again.
You tell this movie's a little bit dated because you wouldn't go to a park with hooligans in nowadays.
Those hooligans are in the park again. There's something going on out there.
And I think that this sequence is probably one of my favourites in the film, when you've got the suit guy in the London Underground. For whatever reason, the London Underground is fucking empty.
That's always a bad sign in horror movies. If you're the only person down there, run.
And he can hear the howling from the distance, and he's like, I find this the least bit funny. Until he sees it. And just like the beginning of the film, we are now from the POV of the creature getting closer to him. Yeah. And of course, he legs it, he runs. And this is one of those moments in the film where you realise, like, the soundtrack for this film is so minimal that this chase sequence doesn't have a single thread of music whatsoever. It's just the tapping of his boots on the tiles. When he fumbles, the heavy breathing and the growling. And there's that moment where he falls onto the escalator and goes up, and the shot over his shoulder looking down, and even though the wolf is as far in the background as it can be, you still see the size of it.
Yes, yeah, and It's that one shot in the movie that, like, I'm glad I see because it makes me appreciate all the stuff I don't see.
Yes.
You know, I spent a lot of time when I was a kid watching this film, and that perspective of chasing him down the corridor, I always used to sit there going, oh, you can't see anything. You can't see anything, so it's not really there. When I got older, I understood camera work.
But when you saw that shot then of him on the escalator, it's enough to paint your imagination as to what just followed.
Yeah, well, it's like with the three homeless men. They don't really have much of a great sequence. I mean, it's a great shot with the London Bridge behind them and them stood around the fire. But it's when one of them just says, like, Mother of God.
Yeah.
And you see a quick flash of
it cuts
the roar.
to the train they're going past.
And the editing of...
Now, those three homeless people's death sequences were all filmed, but John Landis kept making cuts to the film because of test audiences going, that's too violent, it's too horrible. I don't want to see that. And John Landis himself regrets making those cuts because he needed to cut the film to get an R rating, otherwise he was getting the X rating because of sex and violence and swearing.
Yeah,
so.
And I think that the movie... That's what makes it stand out so more. It's less is more.
Yes.
Once again, you know.
It does then help balance the horror comedy, I think, by not having those gore shots. Because we do see the after results of some
totally.
of them.
Yeah, I mean, the next bit, this whole next bit, this whole third of the movie is now the rundown of the movie. Like, he wakes up in the zoo, surrounded by wolves, you know, freaking out how he ever got there. And he's got to steal a little boy's balloons to cover his modesty as he's running around. And then he steals a woman's pink coat. And it's brilliant just watching David Naughton running back and forth with the camera on him while he's trying to escape from this zoo. You know, and he's going insane.
A naked American man stole my balloons. What?
Dr. Hirsch and Nurse Price are obviously, you know, communicating about where he's gone, what's going on. You know, there's been these murders in the city. David's missing. You know, we think he might be involved somehow. And so David gets home and Nurse Alex is like, look, Dr. Hirsch says, I've got to bring you to him. We need to find out what's going on. And David's all excited. Like, well, I'm chipper. You know, I don't feel hungry anymore for whatever reason. And, you know, I'm all awake. And so they get into a taxi and they're driving to Dr. Hirsch. And you've got Bricktop from Snatch, Alan Ford, driving the taxi.
Right.
And he mentions about the murders. 6 people killed all over the city. Must be a right psycho. And it dawns on David that it must be him. It's true. You know, they don't know what happened to him last night. He woke up at the zoo. His friend was killed by a werewolf. There must be a connection. And I loved, like once again, the movie does show itself to be a little bit dated by David running up to a police officer and just shouting the worst obscenities I think I've ever heard.
Queen Elizabeth is a man. Prince Charles is a faggot. Winston Churchill was full of shit. That's enough.
And trying to be arrested, like, thump the police officer if you're going to get arrested.
Right.
And I would have loved to have seen that, because then my mind goes, oh, imagine them throwing him in a cell and then the
transformation, and then the werewolf escaping in the police precinct.
In the police precinct.
And then we're going to have Wolf Cop.
And you woke up, you know. Or what happens if he had got to Dr. Hirsch and they tied him to a bed, you know. But like we said, the movie's keeping the comedy element of David actually not being arrested.
So he runs away.
Yeah.
He runs away, and he ends up... this is one of my favourite scenes again. It shows the humanity of his character, where he goes to a payphone.
Oh, yes,
and
I love this
he calls back home, and he can't speak to his parents, but he speaks to his sister, and he's just like, look, just tell Mum and Dad I love them. I love you too.
Yeah.
You know, just everything's okay.
It's that little bit of dialogue he says where he's just like, what do you mean you've been left home alone? They would have never have let me stay home at the age of 10. You know, like how times have changed. And it's just him on the phone.
Yeah.
You know, he's not really talking to anybody, but he's acting.
Yeah, but he sells it, yeah. I mean, it's, again, like I said, this film's a tragedy, you know? But this next bit, again, back to the comedy where he sees Jack on the other side of the road.
Jack's
like, hey, come in. He's looking real bad.
He's looking real bad.
And we can see on the you know, on the billboard outside that they're watching See You Next Wednesday. And when he goes in there, he sits down, and it's an orgy. It's a porno movie that they're watching.
What the
But he sat there with now Puppet Jack and all of the corpses of all of those that he'd eaten the night before.
Is that an actual film that they're watching, or is it one that they just made up for?
It was the very first thing that John Landis filmed before going into full production with this. So he
Right.
shot that ready to put in cinema.
I mean,
for this.
Jesus
now,
Christ.
In the original script, it wasn't a porno theater; it was a cartoon theater.
Ah, right, okay.
Because when he wrote the script in the 60s and 70s, those theaters in London
Yeah.
would be showing old
Cartoons.
Warner Brothers cartoons.
Cartoons, yeah.
But then in the 80s, they all turned into porno theaters.
theaters, yeah.
So he was like, well, I have to change the script and turn it into that now.
Yeah.
But here's like the thing that John Landis has said. He didn't even mean it to be a thing, but it is a thing. But back when he was writing scripts, he wrote a script called See You Next Wednesday, but it never got picked up or developed.
Right.
So whenever he borrowed a line of dialogue from that unused script,
Yeah.
he would give it a nod in whatever film it's cameoing in.
Nice.
You'll see it in Blues Brothers when the cops are parked outside. The big billboard.
Yeah,
See you next
see you next
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Trading places in the background of his apartment. The poster's there. See you next Wednesday.
That's amazing.
The line itself comes from 2001: A Space Odyssey, when the guy's calling back to his parents, and the very last thing the dad says is, "We'll see you next Wednesday."
See you next Wednesday.
And that's where it's all kind of come from, and
Love it.
you'll be looking out for it now in other John Landis movies. It's not in all of them, but
No.
it's just this thing that people on the internet like to point out.
It's amazing. I love the fact that this porno movie that we're watching, the actors themselves even reference it, where like up to this point, if you're watching American Werewolf in London up to this point, you've been on the hell ride, you're loving every moment, and they watch this porno, and you got that guy who walks in who's just like, I can't believe you would do this, and then the guy on the bed's just like, I don't know who you are, I'm talking to her, I don't know who you are either, oh sorry, and he just walks out. And then David cuts to Jack and goes, great movie. And Jack's like, mm-hmm. And you feel that. I felt it watching the film, like, yeah, American Werewolf in London is a great movie. Because then you get this whole conversation part. You know, Jack is, like I said, he's looking rotten. He's a puppet. I love he's got his eyes are really wide. And my mind's just like, well, it's because his
eyelids are gone.
His eyelids gone. He can't fucking close them. And then he's looking around and he says to David, like, look, here are the people you killed last night. They are now walking limbo corpses like me. And you'll just make more and more and more. And your mind goes, fucking hell. So that old man at the beginning, I wonder how many he saw.
Right.
You know, and maybe he was an escaped lunatic because he believed he was seeing the dead people that he was killing. And they're all coming up with these great fucking ideas of suicide.
You could shoot yourself.
Yes.
All you need is a gun. Just aim it towards your head and pull the trigger.
Or put it in your mouth. Don't miss. Cyanide, you know. And they're all pissed at him, you know. But Jack's just like, look, he's my friend. Fucking lay off him, you know. We're trying the best we can.
No, if you did it wrong, it could be painful. You'd choke to death.
So what? Let him choke.
Do you mind? The man's a friend of mine.
Well, he ain't no friend to me.
But then the moon comes out that one final time and he starts to change in the cinema.
You get that one usher who's just like, what's going on here? He's like, get out now, please, I'm going to turn.
Yeah.
And we get the commotion as loads of people come running out screaming. And we get the one police officer going in there with a flashlight. And he looks and we see the carnage, the mess of this corpse. And this is probably the best shot, I think, of the wolf, like, you know, more full of blood and remains.
Yeah, stood over
just
the
howling.
body.
Yeah, just great. And then, you know, then we've got the shutters coming down. We got the police running around outside.
I read in the note sequence that, you know, he had to shut Piccadilly Circus down to be able to film this sequence. And that's not something fucking easy to do,
Right.
to shut Piccadilly Circus down. You know, trying to shut down a major section of a city. But to do that, he allowed the Metropolitan police officers to watch an early screening of the Blues Brothers.
That's right.
And they were so impressed by how he filmed in the city and how he made it look that they were like, yeah, okay then, but you've only got like from 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. So you've got
a small window. You've
got a 3-hour stint to film what you need to film. And that's mainly what this whole section is, this whole crash sequence, because you know, Dr. Hirsch and Nurse Price get information that there's a wild dog running around Piccadilly Circus. The police detectives head down there as well because they've heard rumours that David is down there too. The wolf smashes through the shutters, and the detective, who's been completely inept throughout the whole movie and has been belittling his partner, you know, and making out that there's no such things as incredibly giant, huge, mysterious monsters, gets his head fucking bitten off by this incredibly huge, mysterious monster.
Bounces off the hood of the car into the street.
Yeah, and makes a crash. You've got cars crashing everywhere, buses crashing in, people getting squashed, there's bodies on the floor.
John Landis cameo as he flies through the glass.
You got that great shot of the wolf kind of walking through the crowd. Now, older me, you know, more experienced me knows that, you know, you've got 4 or 5 guys holding a model as it's walking through as the camera's following.
It's actually a guy laying on a plank.
Oh.
And so it's his arms in the front of the suit. So you've
nice.
got they decided that because it wasn't going to be bipedal 2 legs, it's going to be the 4-legged creature.
Yeah.
Rick Baker decided that the creature would be, you know, like when the wheelbarrow race when
somebody
holds your legs.
Yeah.
That's the design that they went for.
Yes.
So there's literally like you never see the back end of the wolf because there'll be 2 legs sticking out of his butt.
Yeah.
Because that's the guy laying down in the suit.
Yeah, and like I said, they didn't have CGI at this point, people, so that when they did get CGI in 1997, everyone went, oh, look, shit. But in comparison...
Again, just to do the shots of just the werewolf head, we're just snapping at things going by.
Yeah.
That's Rick Baker sat in a wheelchair with just the head prop that can snap its jaws. And the director pushing him in the wheelchair around Piccadilly Square. It's so simple.
It's so simple. And they get the wolf cornered at the end of this alleyway. Now, part of me is just like, why didn't they just wait until dawn? You know, and just sit there with their guns.
This is true. This is very true.
Just sit there until dawn. I mean, okay, it's going to try and attack, but I get the feeling the wolf is scared and it's running. Part of you thinks that David is still alive in there.
All of these thoughts. I mean, the film doesn't really give you enough chance to process these thoughts because, you know, Nurse Price goes down there and she's like, David, I love you.
Yeah.
It was one of the last things he said to her as well.
Yeah.
And you see the close-up of the wolf and you see it relax its snout.
Like it's realised.
Like it doesn't have to be afraid. It doesn't have to fight and kill.
Yeah.
But then it launches at her and gets shot down and killed.
Yeah. Because, part of me still thinks that when you're the wolf, you are 90% the wolf and 10% still the man. So when you're the man, you're 90% the man, but you're still 10% the wolf inside. So he recognized Alex and he didn't want to attack her, but he's the wolf. This is what they do. They attack and kill. And so, he gets blasted.
There was the part of him that knew that if he did attack her, he knew all the cops have got guns and rifles on him. He's going to get shot down and killed, and he needs to die to end the curse. So he could have done it as a suicide attack.
I mean,
but it's unlikely. We don't know. You can just theorize and come up with ideas.
I came up with fan ideas back in the day of, you know, they had sex, you know, while he was infected with the werewolf stuff. Yeah. So after he's died, if she was to get a baby.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the unmade, like, second script that never really materialized, she does have a werewolf baby. Yeah. And then becomes a werewolf hunter. And
rumors were circulating that in 1997, American Werewolf in Paris was supposed to be, the main actor was supposed to be the son of this couple, but Jenny Agutter was going to turn up, but they didn't. And then they didn't bother going with the storyline. They just tried to make a inept sequel, which isn't great, but honestly, I've seen worse werewolf sequels. I fucking have. American Werewolf in Paris is not bad. It's just not.
No, it is bad.
It's not American
bad.
Werewolf.
It's fucking atrocious.
Yeah.
Well, Ian, do you have any memorable or favourite scenes from the film?
The whole fucking movie, like I meant to make a joke for this film review where I was going to pretend I didn't bring my notepad and just wing the whole movie because the movie is so fresh in my head and I've seen it so many times and I've got such a connection to this movie. I was going to and then I inadvertently forgot my notepad. So I have none of my favourite scenes to go back to, but I do have my memories. And everything about this movie just works. The music, the camera work, the editing, the acting, the script, like the death sequences there's only a couple, but they hit you enough. You know, 20 minutes into the movie when Jack gets fucking ripped to pieces. Oh my God. An hour later when you get that couple walk into the back of the house and then they get jumped. Oh my God. You know, the end sequence with the conversations with all the corpses. you know, Griffin Dunne, David Naughton, Jenny Agutter. The whole movie. I'm done.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's impossible to pick great sequences. Of course, I'm going to take the transformation sequence right off the bat. Like, there's, only the Howling has ever really come close, but An American Werewolf in London is still the winner, hands down. I love the slaughtered lamb sequence, the first attack on the moors, the chase in the London Underground. The adult cinema suicide conversation is great. The nightmare sequence, the family being attacked by Nazi werewolves, and of course the Piccadilly Square massacre. Like, it's just there's the whole film. It really is the whole film, which is why, Iain, it should come as no surprise. How much do you recommend American Werewolf in London?
Far, far, far too much. Like, I can't explain it to you. You have to watch the film, okay? I could recommend it to you if you've seen it. If you haven't and you're reluctant, you have to. You owe it to yourself. I know I've brought up the sequel a couple of times, and I don't really want to dwell on it too much. But in fairness, I have just gone through the Howling series of movies, and 1, 2, and maybe 3... I'll go at a push are not bad. 4, 5, and 6 are so fucking terrible. I would watch American Werewolf in Paris any day of the week, because at least with that movie, they made the effort of trying. They were never going to even come close to capturing the same fucking amazing lightning in a bottle that they got with American Werewolf in London. And I will say that I don't think you ever will ever again. Everything just lined up for this movie. The moon was just at its fullest with this movie. The special effects, like I said, the acting, the script work, the time, the effort, everything just... Yes.
Yes. Which is why it's like one of the easiest film recommendations I've ever made. An American Werewolf in London is arguably the greatest werewolf film ever made, and has remained that way for 40 years. It continues to impress with some of the best practical effects ever put into a film, standing the test of time. The transformation scene especially is wonderful, fantastic, and unmatched. It's terrifying, fascinating, and iconic. The cast were all on point, really well delivered, but the standout for me was always Griffin Dunne as Jack. He really balanced the horror comedy very well. The script and the direction of John Landis is perfectly executed, a real passion project, and you can see the love they all had for this project. The film, for me, doesn't have a memorable score, but a great playlist of songs with Moon in the lyrics, including Blue Moon and Bad Moon Rising. They're all memorable and forever tied to this film. It's a great film, really, about a best friend who spends 75 minutes trying to convince his other friend to kill himself. And it does so, though, in a very entertaining way, while still exploring themes and issues like survivor's guilt and mental illness and of being an outsider. This film is easily my favourite within the werewolf genre, and one of the best films in the horror genre. And the fact that it is also darkly hilarious, it manages both equally well, achieving better results than some films which attempted only one, like horror or comedy. It's the highest recommendation I can give. If you watch films, this is a must-watch from the director of Animal House, a different kind of animal. But I don't want to just leave you there, because now that we've reviewed the greatest werewolf movie ever made, the questions usually do arise as to, well, what's left? What ones? Because there are a lot of awful werewolf movies out there, so I thought I'd just put together a very quick list and a very quick recap of what those films are, so that if you've already seen American Werewolf in London and you need something else, maybe give these ones a shot if you haven't seen them already. Brotherhood of the Wolf, which came out in 2001 from director Christophe Gans. It's set in an 18th century France about two friends who are hired to investigate hundreds of killings by a beast. I'd say it's not a werewolf movie per se, but it's such a good film with a monster in it, it's absolutely worth a watch. Dog Soldiers from 2002, Neil Marshall, about a routine military training exercise which turns into a werewolf siege movie in the Scottish wilderness. This is must-watch excellence and another top-tier werewolf movie. The Company of Wolves from 1984, Neil Jordan. A teenage girl in a country manor dreaming of wolves that prowl outside her window. It's like a dreamy, stylized version of Red Riding Hood. It's very artsy, but incredibly memorable. Of course, The Howling from 1981, Joe Dante. A recovering news reporter is sent to a resort run by werewolves. Again, another awesome transformation, gore, and effects movie. Ginger Snaps from 2000. It's about two death-obsessed sisters who tried to deal with the tragic consequences when one of them is bitten by a werewolf. Highly, highly rate Ginger Snaps. Not so much with the sequels, but great performances from the two leads. I'd also give a shout out to Bad Moon from 1996, directed by Eric Red. After being bitten by a werewolf, Ted looks for a cure while his family slowly uncovers his secret. It's got some great practical werewolf effects and gore, but a lackluster story and characters. Watch it just for the wolf. They did a really good werewolf on screen. No transformation, but a fantastic looking modern werewolf. I'd also give a shout out to Silver Bullet from 1985. Yeah, we reviewed that one a while back. The Stephen King adaptation with Gary Busey and Corey Haim. It's childish but fun. Not a full recommendation from me, but enough people out there really like that one. I'd also give a shout out to The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which is the most modern one, which came out in 2020. Written, directed, and starring Jim Cummings. About terror gripping a small mountain town as the bodies are discovered every full moon. Officer John Marshall must get his life in order while solving the werewolf myth. Again, mixing comedy and horror with some great character moments and gore. And of course, you have to go back, all the way back to 1941, and watch The Wolfman by George Wagner. You know, the Lon Chaney classic. You know, it might not have any of the gore or any of the effects of today, but that film is just pure atmosphere. With all that being said, we hope you have a fantastic Halloween. Enjoy some horror movies, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Good movie.
Mm-hmm.